For 50 years or so, probably beginning in the 1960s, the architecture department at Cornell occupied what is now room 261 in East Sibley Hall, with studio classrooms, and then, beginning in about 1974, with book stacks for the Fine Arts Library. Both occupancies contained fewer than 50 people in this dead-end space, so having only one exit was legal and appropriate. Cornell's egress plan shows a primary and secondary exit, but these exits are not separated from each other by a distance equal to at least a third of the room's diagonal length. So effectively, they count as a single exit, since if one is blocked during a fire, the other will be blocked as well. This is a basic tenet of all modern building codes and applies to all sprinklered spaces with more than 49 occupants. After Milstein Hall was constructed as an addition to Sibley and Rand Halls, the desired connection between the three buildings at the second floor level was thwarted by the library occupancy of East Sibley Hall, since the security required in the stack area prevented free movement of people from Milstein into Sibley Hall. For this and other reasons, the library was moved out of Sibley Hall and into the third floor of Rand Hall. This move was not supported by the building code and should never have been permitted because Rand Hall's third floor, now part of a larger building with type 5B wood frame construction, could not legally accommodate an assembly occupancy such as a library above the second floor level. After Cornell, with the Ithaca Building Department's blessing, moved the library into this non-compliant space anyway, I filed a code appeal that ultimately reversed the determination of the City of Ithaca Building Department. Cornell, faced with an illegal occupation of the Rand Hall space, ultimately applied for and received a code variance from the state of New York, in spite of my objections. But that's another story. What remained in the vacated library space, that is in room 261 East Sibley, was an essentially unprogrammed assembly space with a new occupant load determined by Cornell to be up to 300 persons. While this maximum occupancy limit was later changed to 240, it still far exceeded the allowable occupancy for any space with only one exit. For that reason, at the same code appeal hearing where I challenged the move of the library to Rand Hall, this was before the New York State Capital Region Syracuse Board of Review on July 18, 2013, I also questioned the propriety of allowing such an assembly space to have only one exit. Here's the rationale that Cornell provided to the review board in defense of this clearly illegal and unsafe occupancy. Quote, East Sibley Room 261 is part of a larger space served by two remote exits to which the common path of exit does not exceed 75 feet. The design complies. End quote. They added this additional nonsensical explanation. Quote, there are multiple doors into Milstein which were not originally designed as exits when the space was used as a library and required a secure perimeter. End quote. There are a number of errors in Cornell's testimony. First, it is absolutely inappropriate and dangerous to compute the remoteness of exits within a room or area by looking only at the remoteness of exits for the building as a whole. The plan provided by Cornell shows only the remoteness calculation for East Sibley Hall as a whole, but not for room 261. And this is a blatant misreading of the code. Section 1004.2.2.1, this is of the 2002 version of the code, states that exits, quote, shall be placed a distance apart equal to not less than 1/2 or 1/3, per exception for sprinklers, of the length of the maximum overall diagonal dimension of the building or area to be served, end quote. The area to be served in this case is room 261, not the entire floor of East Sibley Hall. The idea that this room, quote, is part of a larger space with two remote exits, end quote, and therefore does not need to satisfy exit requirements for its own occupancy, is so completely wrong-headed and dangerous that I find it hard to believe that such statements would be put in writing by both the architect of record and the architect managing the project for Cornell. Cornell's plan, provided in a handout that they gave to the Board of Review, further states that, quote, door 1, 2, and 3 can be opened into Milstein Hall, end quote. First, this is factually inaccurate, as these doors are almost always locked. Second, having doors that, quote, can be opened is not a sufficient specification for a legal exit. For one thing, there are no exit signs marking these doors as exits, and there is no special hardware that guarantees that the doors remain unlocked. Third, such exits would create new exiting conditions in Milstein Hall that were not part of the permitted set of drawings. A new building permit would be required, and new exit calculations would need to be provided before the doors leading from room 261 to Milstein Hall can be used as exits from Sibley Hall. Cornell's testimony at the hearing described the posted occupancies of room 261 as a relic of the original pre-Milstein era. In other words, that this posted occupancy was not something newly contrived, but rather a lingering remnant of the old occupancy. But a library stack area has a load factor of 100 square feet per occupant, or only 17 occupants for the entire room. This clearly has no relationship to the posted occupancy of 112 or 240 or 300 persons. Since my video of the older occupancy sign was taken after the certificate of occupancy for Milstein Hall was issued in February 2012, the newer sign was clearly not a remnant of the older library occupancy, but something done deliberately. It therefore should have triggered a code review under the existing building code of New York State, since all changes of occupancy, even those within the same A3 occupancy class, require code review. Increasing the occupancy of a space from 100 square feet per occupant to 7 square feet per occupant, and thereby increasing the occupant load in the room from 17 to 300 or 240, clearly is something that the building department should review, especially in a space with only a single legal exit. For some unknown reason, the review board upheld the decision of the Ithaca Building Department, but in a manner that effectively supported my objections. Rather than agreeing that the posted occupancy sign was inconsistent with a single exit, the board mentioned that there seemed to be a business occupancy in this area rather than an assembly occupancy, as if that makes any difference in the number of persons permitted in a space with only one exit. They also stated that any changes in the future will require proper review and permission from the City of Ithaca Building Department, and that the posting of the occupant load must be immediately reviewed for the current use and altered as required. Well, this is exactly what I requested in my complaint, so it remains unclear to me why the board didn't simply overturn the decision of the Ithaca Building Department. In any case, the result of all this was the removal of the maximum occupancy sign and the provision of a new exit and exit sign. Back in room 261 Sibley, formerly with one exit, they have finally created a second means of egress. Emergency only, push until alarm sounds, door can be opened in 15 seconds. And not only that, we have an exit sign. So this room can now accommodate more than 50 people.